There's now talk about what's next for her and whether she'll stay out of politics for good or go on. Al Jazeera's Rosalind Jordan looks back at Clinton's accomplishments so far.
More than 1.5 million kilometers traveled in 4 years, 37 times around the Earth. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's journey made easier, perhaps, by having spent 2 decades on the world stage.
I will do all that I can, working with our president, to make sure that we deliver on the promises that are at the very core of what this new administration and this new era represent.
Clinton joined the Obama administration after a bitter presidential campaign with an unshakable loyalty to the president's agenda. When the U.S. was ready to restore ties with Myanmar, it was Clinton who delivered the message.
Democracy is the goal. And
the U.S.'s relationship with Afghanistan and Pakistan consumed much of Clinton's attention. She stressed the need to use smart power and civil society building alongside military might to further U.S. goals. Despite the famous reboot with Russia, the two countries' ties are still strained, and there still isn't much trust between Washington and Beijing. However, Clinton has not suffered politically because of the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, where Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other U.S. citizens were killed in September.
the people of Egypt, Libya, Yemen, and Tunisia did not trade the tyranny of a dictator for the tyranny of a mob.
With her track record as First Lady, then as U.S. Senator, and now Secretary of State, many of Hillary Clinton's supporters say that the logical next step for her is the White House. But is that something that the Secretary wants for herself? Is that how she wants to continue her record of public service? Those who know Clinton say she's not done with public service yet.
I think that she will be back in some form, but I think that she will always be interested in speaking for those whose voice has been muted.
But only Hillary Clinton knows, and beyond taking some time off, she's not revealing her next move. Rosalind Jordan, Al Jazeera, the State Department.
Joining me now is Jason Johnson. He's a professor of political science and communications at Hiram College. Jason, what do you think? Her legacy, a popular one, a strong one, constructive? How would you describe it?
Well, she will have a historic legacy in the United States. Hillary Clinton is a role model for women, not just in the U.S., but women around the world. She is a role model for feminists. She is a role model for public service. There are some black marks on her record, but I think she will go down as one of the greatest Americans of the 20th century, definitely.
One of the great Americans of the 20th century for achieving what?
For, believe it or not, getting to a position of success by being married to a president. Let's be honest, Hillary Clinton didn't get to where she was by following a traditional path, but what she took was an old-fashioned path of marrying into power and then doing the best she could with that position. Her run for President of the United States in 2008 was historic. She gained a great deal of respect for her work as Secretary of State. And again, she is a feminist icon. Whether or not it's all justified is a secondary question, but many people do have a great deal of respect for her.
Well, I don't know if she'd agree that she will be remembered best for marrying a president, Jason. But anyway, let's move on to the Middle East. Did she do enough to try and solve what some see as the intractable problems of the Middle East?
On some levels, yes and no. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, the Arab Spring, part of why it was successful or perceived to be successful on the part of many people in the United States is because the U.S. didn't intervene that heavily. We did not run around the world and play police force as much when many different countries were trying to find their own path to democracy or just new leadership, and she was a part of that restraint. She was also part of the process of capturing Osama bin Laden. She has not done that much for the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, but at the same time, she did play an active role in the Middle East, and many people think that some of the stability in the area today can be attributed to her work.
Well, nothing was achieved in the first years of Barack Obama's presidency, his first term, in the peace process. Does she bear some responsibility for that?
Oh, definitely. Look, she's no Henry Kissinger. You know, she's not the greatest Secretary of State that the United States has ever had. In fact, you know, some of her signature accomplishments are, you know, pushing sanctions against Iran and saying that we would not allow human rights to prevent the United States from establishing stronger economic relationships with China. So it's not that she's the greatest Secretary of State of all time, but she can be seen as someone who positively spoke out for women's rights across the world, someone who did manage a very tumultuous time in the Middle East without the United States making serious mistakes, and someone who reestablished positive relationships with Europe after they were severely damaged by 8 years of George Bush.
She's been accused of taking her eye off the ball with Benghazi. Did that damage her, do you think?
It hasn't damaged her on the American stage at all. Her performance, and I do think it was a performance, last week when she was being questioned by the Senate was considered masterful by many political observers. The reality is the United States State Department, they did lie or did mislead the public for a while by suggesting that they didn't know what the Benghazi attack was about. However, Hillary Clinton quickly took responsibility, said, look, we won't let this happen again, and accepted criticism within the government. And so I think a lot of Americans and a lot of observers say, look, this is someone who's willing to take responsibility when a mistake is made, and that is new for the State Department in the United States.
It's certainly very rare for a politician. I don't want to be rude and say this publicly, but she is 65. So 65, people are talking about her as a possible candidate for the presidency?
I've got to be rude with you. I've been saying for a long time, I don't think she's going to run for president. She is too old. We do not have people in the United States running for president in their 60s and 70s at this point. It's very difficult to connect with young voters. It's very difficult to connect with millennials. And there's that little fact that she's not the vice president of the United States. Joe Biden will have something to do with whether or not she runs. Do I think Hillary Clinton will play a role in the 2016 elections? Most definitely. But in many ways, even when it comes to attracting women voters, her position has somewhat been eclipsed by Michelle Obama. So it'll be interesting to see what role she plays. I don't think it's a guarantee she's running for president.
Well, I think she looks a very youthful 65, Jason. So I wouldn't hold age against her. What do you think of John Kerry, the man who's stepping into her very delicate shoes, no doubt?
Well, I think John Kerry is a very sort of stable and reasonable and middle-of-the-road selection, which is perfect for Barack Obama. You know, Obama doesn't necessarily have problems with having superstars in his administration, but, you know, Hillary Clinton was really in a category all of her own. John Kerry will faithfully do whatever it is Barack Obama wants. He doesn't have any particularly unique doctrines or philosophies to express, any real causes. So I think it'll be a very smooth transition, and we won't hear a lot out of the Secretary of State anymore now that it's no longer Hillary Clinton.
Jason Johnson, Professor of Political Science. Many thanks, Jason, to you. Good talking to you.
Thank you.